Well, what advice would you give business owners on how to handle their star players and their executive management?
You know, there's no set answer. You've got to deal with them individually, and as much as you want to treat everybody the same, you know, because you don't want to tell the people who aren't at the star level that they're treated differently or they're not treated the same as the star. You've got to recognize the differences in people, and I've always tried to keep them motivated in one way or the other. You know, I've always had an approach, whether it's the Mavericks or any of my organizations, there's no limit on compensation. If you take the risk of commission, more power to you if you sell a lot. I'm not going to string you out to squeeze you back so I can make a little bit more money. And so I think by trying to let everybody know that their compensation is only limited by their effort, you tend to be able to deal with stars. Whereas if you put a limit on them, then you know, it's like saying, well, I played my 40 minutes. I don't have to play. I don't have to do anything else. They reach the limit and they go to bed, or it's even worse. They'll look around and say, you know, I sold my quota and you didn't. What's the matter with you? And you've got to deal with all that nonsense. So I tend not to put limits, and I tend to encourage people. And sometimes I'll also put the reward ahead of the cart. Meaning, someone once gave me a great example where they gave. This was years ago. They guess. We give our new salespeople a Cadillac, and we tell them if they don't hit their numbers, we're taking it away, because no one wants to be the guy who lost the Cadillac. And sometimes by giving the reward up front in something that is very visible, you know, the fear of losing that visible reward sometimes tends to balance things out. And so, you know, I've tried various tricks, but you basically have to understand the people you're working with. And then the other thing I'd say is you have to define the culture of your organization, because if there isn't a culture, then individuals tend to fight it out to try to have things their way. You know, players on a basketball team like to be general managers. This coach can't do this, or this player can't do that. And players are terrible judges of talent, and salespeople and managers are terrible judges of talent as well. You know, you hired them for a specific job. Maybe they have talents to expand into other things, and you reward them and help them get there. But I think entrepreneurs sometimes fall short in that they don't define and understand the culture of their companies. I've always tried to make the culture of any of my companies about selling. It's always selling time. If I see two salespeople talking to each other and it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm going to walk up and go, who's got the check? Because somebody better damn well be buying something from somebody else, because otherwise it's selling time and you should be out there selling. And if you're doing that and you're successful, I'm rewarding you. And if you're not doing your job. And I think that, and a little bit of a culture of fun and a little bit of culture of adventure, I think has really helped all my companies.
Flying here, I sat down next to a pilot who was deadheading. He's on his way here to get some sim time at American Airlines. Mm-hmm. And he lives in Northwest Chicago, and I had to tell him who I was coming to interview. And he quickly went into, man, I wish he would have bought the Cubs. But, well, anyway, we both were wondering what the heck it's got to be like to wake up in the morning and know you own a prominent NBA team.
It's pretty cool. You know, it's fun most of the time. It's fun when you're winning because you're proud as a peacock walking down the street. It's painful when you're losing, because it's my responsibility. It's kind of like being dad. When your kids are doing great in school, you're thrilled as being your proud as can be. When your kids aren't doing well, then you got to hear the bad news from the teacher and figure out how you're going to deal with it, because there's so much at stake. And I'm not saying what happens with the sports team is as important as what happens with your kids, but what I am saying is that I never realized the importance of the Mavericks to the community until I bought the team. I was a fan, but I could let it go when I left the arena after a game. I might talk to friends, I might get excitable about it, but that was just entertainment to me. Once I bought the team and I started getting emails and calls and letters and visits from people talking about the importance of it to their family, you start to recognize that, for some families, grandma watches every game and it's the only way she can relate to little Johnny or little Susie, who are gothed out or tattooed out or got pierced everything, and they're, you know, they talk about the Mavs at dinner, or, you know, families or friends or couples that go to games, and their night, how they feel that night depends on whether or not we win, or, you know, kids who look up to certain players, and, you know, you know, it's heart-wrenching. And I can't tell you how many times it's happened where, you know, I'll get a call or email from a parent who's just distraught that, you know, their son or daughter has got cancer or has died. And, you know, I've had it happen twice where somebody's asked to be buried in a dirt jersey, you know, or another player's jersey. And, you know, or on the positive side, wedding themes, you know, we met at a Mavs game where our first date was a Mavs game. We're huge Mavs fans. You know, the theme of our wedding is going to be the Mavs, and I just had one. You know, can we get the warm-ups in these sizes, and will you help us because our groomsmen are going to be wearing Mavs warm-up jerseys? You know, I'm thinking on one hand you're crazy, but you know, it's cool, and so knowing that you're so entrenched in the community is wonderful, but it's also a weight and a responsibility. And I think the owners in any sport that are really involved, when we watch a game, you don't just see a win or loss for that game. You see the implications of all decisions you have to make when things are working versus when they're not working. You brought this player in as a pitcher or as a center, as a point guard, and if they don't do what you expected of them, how does that impact all your decision making, and how does that impact the future, and, you know, how are you going to sell it to fans, and what are fans going to think, because that's your customer and you got to keep your customers happy. And so it's exciting, but it's also sometimes overwhelming.
Thank you very much, Mark.
That's it. I want more. Those are great questions. Give me more.
I got a zillion NBA questions for you, but
Give me more.
we'll get them
You did a
off
great
camera.
job, Jeff.
Hey,
Appreciate it.
thank you.
Thank you.